Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Irene Stone, and I will be the moderator this evening for the Santa Barbara Mayoral Candidate Forum. I welcome you on behalf of the League of Women Voters Education Fund. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan and welcomes both men and women as members or as donors to our educational activities. We neither support nor oppose political parties or candidates for office. We conduct these forums so you may have the opportunity to see and hear the candidates, ask some questions, and make up your own minds. Tonight, we are pleased to present the two candidates running for mayor of Santa Barbara. And in order as they're sitting here, Wayne Scholes and Helene Schneider. Cards were passed out at the door for your questions to be submitted to the candidates during the second part of the forum. If you need a card, please signal one of our volunteers around the room for a card. It is important that your card have one heading as a topic, heading at the top, and it should contain just one question or a single subject. Be brief. The cards will be reviewed by a panel, and questions will be grouped by subject. When your question is ready, you can hold it up for collection. The candidates have reviewed the format for today's forum, which will be as follows. First, each participant will give a 1-minute opening statement. We have drawn cards or numbers, and Mr. Scholes will begin. We will alternate between the candidates so that each will have an opportunity to be first and then last. The candidates will then be asked 3 questions. The candidates have not been given these questions in advance, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer each one. We will then take a short break so that we can collect your questions and sort them, and then we will be ready to begin again. We will allow 1.5 minutes per response, with that, and then we should probably have time for about 5 or 6 questions. Finally, we will stop so that each of the candidates will be able to make a 2-minute closing statement. I'd also like to point out that we do have a team of timers here in the front who will be giving time signals to the candidates. Because time is limited and we want to hear as much as we can from our candidates, please hold your applause until the end of the forum. Now, we are ready to begin with opening statements, and according to our draw here, we will start with Mr. Scholes.
Hi, my name is Wayne Scholes. I've lived in Santa Barbara 39 years. I've had a wide variety of experience in occupations. I graduated from UCSB with a BA in studio art and got my California teaching credential there. Taught public schools 6 through 12 for a number of years. During our last recession in the early 80s. Owned a home health care agency. I'm a member of the Plumber and Pipe Fitters Union. I've worked a variety of occupations and jobs in those areas, and I brought some pictures to show people if you're interested during the break. One of the big jobs I worked on was a space shuttle project at Vandenberg, pulling the reactor head at Diablo Canyon, and working on a solar farm recently at Genesis Solar Project out in Blythe. And also, these are my security badges for Intel Worldwide Badge from Hillsboro in Oregon, where I was able to work in a building called RP1, which is the only top secret research and development building Intel has in the world. Out of 5,000 construction workers, there were only 45 of us allowed to work there. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Ms. Schneider.
Thank you, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity tonight. I've been honored to serve the city of Santa Barbara as mayor these last 4 years, and before that was on the city council. In my first term as mayor, we've certainly experienced quite a number of challenges, given with the recession and slowly now coming out of the recession, but also some great opportunities. And I'm very proud as mayor to have worked with a council that's been able to actually get some significant policy decisions accomplished, especially even with 7-0 votes, such as adopting our general plan, working on safety improvements on Milpas Street, restriping Cliff Drive, and expanding our restorative policing program. We were able to deal with a major recession by eliminating 80 positions over attrition, working with our bargaining groups, and finding a way so that when now we have the economy coming back up, we can restore those services by setting some good priorities on a good financial footing. So I hope I can encourage voters to vote for me again for a second term as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going ahead to the questions that have been prepared for the candidates that they have not seen. The first question, and this will start with Ms. Schneider. The mayor is a member of the city council and has specified ceremonial, interpretive, and representative powers. What do you see the mayor's role in formulating and advocating for policy?
Thank you for the question. The mayor's position is very special, even though the mayor only has 1 of 7 votes on policy issues. The mayor's job really sets the tone, I believe, at City Hall, and that's been something that I've taken a lot of pride in and a lot of focus on in terms of bringing together, really in this case, a very politically diverse city council. We have 7 members with a variety of opinions, but it's the mayor's position in running those meetings that can try to come together to bring consensus on major policy issues. And we've been able to do that with significant budget concerns, with adopting the general plan and the housing, historical element. And then outside of council and outside City Hall, to be accessible and approachable throughout the community and making, having the general public and people even from outside the area be able to contact the mayor about what's going on in the city and setting your footing in that point too. So meaning if, there might be something that I particularly believe in and want to push and promote, such as, for example, the arts and the cultural economy, that's certainly something the mayor can promote and help work with businesses, with local artists, trying to enhance whatever is out there and work in partnership with them. It's certainly something that the position of mayor can do uniquely in the city and something that I've been working on quite a bit these last 4 years.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Scholes.
Well, I think the position of mayor is a position of image along with a position of responsibility to the city. Every time you speak to the public, you speak to the representatives at the state level, anytime you represent the city of Santa Barbara, you're representing every single person of Santa Barbara, and you need to understand the heart and soul of the people of Santa Barbara. That's one of the most important things I think you can do as a representative and a public servant, is listen to what the people say. Even though there's council members and the mayor that make these decisions, we should still listen to what the public say, and I'm a firm believer that the will of the public should dictate what the local government does. That's why on my flyer I have a statement that we should have more public involvement. The way I think we can do that is with a computerized phone system where people are able to call in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and voice their opinion about specific issues that are up for vote with the city, such as bulb outs, narrowing of State Street, higher density, types of water use, and actually force the council and the mayor to read the results of what the public will is before they vote on the decisions that are coming up in front of the council. Then we'll know who is voting for the will of the public and who is voting for their own will.
Thank you. Then we're going on to question number 2, and in this case we start with Mr. Scholes. How would you seek to improve the city's financial condition and the local economy?
Okay, that's a big question because there's a lot of different areas that are not interconnected. One of the things I think you'll be interested in on my flyer too is how does the city save money? You work more efficiently. And I've set up an idea for a program for a 10% bonus for city employees who come up with an idea that save the city money on an annual basis. Now, that excludes anybody in a supervisorial position because that's what they're being paid for to start with. But the people are out in the field. If you come up with an idea that saves the city $10,000 a year and it's going to save them $10,000 a year annually, at the end of that year, give that person a 10% bonus for saving the city money. It's a one-time bonus for saving the city money. Other areas, we can cut costs by not doing things that don't work. And it's been brought up numerous times in these forums about the bricks and the terracotta tile that's being used in the crosswalks. Anybody that does anything in ceramics knows that you have to have something that is not porous, does not have a lot of air in it, and is not brittle for trucks and cars to go across. So we wasted money. And so I think we need to approach every single area of the budget separately, but work towards coming to solutions that will work for the public, work for the city, and save us money.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Schneider.
Sure. So first off, I think the city and the mayor and council needs to get its own fiscal house in order, and in the last 4 years, for sure, looking at our reserve policy, and we've updated our financial reserve policy so that if and when we've had a surplus in the city budget, half of the money goes back into the policy reserves and the other half into one-time capital expenses, because we have a actually pretty significant backlog of needs and capital improvements. And we've been able to do that every single year, even during this recession, of bringing the reserve policies back up to towards 9 million, up there from 1 million. So there's that piece. Then there's the day-to-day activities of the city and doing what we can to be more efficient. So even looking at everything from the lighting systems in all our city facilities, looking at our fleet program with our vehicles. By having a carpool program within the city fleet, for example, we were able to be more efficient with our vehicles, to reduce the number of vehicles we actually have to purchase by 8, saving tens of thousands of dollars. And we save over $450,000 now in energy costs just by simply doing some energy retrofits throughout the building, various city buildings.
Thank you, thank you. And now our third question, and again, in this case, we'll start with Ms. Schneider. Do you think Santa Barbara should lead in addressing state and national issues regarding the environment and energy development? What do you see as the mayor's role?
Sure. Well, Santa Barbara, as we all know, is kind of touted as the birthplace of the modern environmental movement, and that was basically due from the catastrophic 1969 oil spill, and the community rising up and saying this is not acceptable, and not only in our community but throughout the country and throughout the world. And so there's two things. There's the internal policies of the Santa Barbara City Council and what happens at City Hall, and being as energy efficient and pro-environment as much as possible. But yes, I do think the mayor's position also in connecting with other mayors throughout the country and learning best practices and taking a stand on issues of a national level, because state and federal laws as it relates to energy efficiency, energy policy, and budgeting affect cities as well. Most people in the United States live in cities, so the more mayors can work together on creating great policies and sharing best practices of what works best on an environmental level throughout the country, we can make a great big impact and help others reach their goals as well.
Thank you. And now Mr. Scholes.
I definitely think Santa Barbara is a leader in the environmental movement. Besides GOO, who a friend of mine, Bud Bottoms, helped start that, my brother and some people at Monterey Bay Aquarium started a nonprofit called Aquinas. And they found out by studying dolphins, because of the movement since the first El Nino, that the dolphins are going to one central location from San Diego, from north of Monterey, to have their babies. They didn't know where they were having them, so they decided to come to my house and stay for a few days so they could do research, because I've told them I've done abalone breeding, I've worked on solar farms, I've worked in nuclear, I've been in every phase of energy conservation. But along with energy conservation, we can't give up on the environment. We can't sacrifice the environment for energy. And they found out in 3 days, they identified over 60 females that were from the Monterey area, and by putting it on the internet, Scripps Aquarium in San Diego was able to identify even more, that Santa Barbara is basically like the Scammons Lagoon for bottlenose dolphins. This is where they come to have their babies. We have one of the biggest lobster rookeries in the West Coast, right off Shoreline Park. And when we have energy savings, we cannot put the environment at risk. There's a lot of advances being made now in solar, and I think every single building in Santa Barbara should work towards energy efficiency. I think we need to get away from the big corporations controlling the cost of our energy.
Thank you, thank you. Well, we have completed our first 3 questions, and at this time we are going to take a short break so that we can collect your questions and sort them to be ready for to ask the audience's questions. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, welcome back. We do have a number of questions for our candidates here. And actually, we didn't have as many duplicates, so we have quite a range, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. We will have up to 1.5 minutes for answers, but if we go faster, then we'll have more questions. So let's start with, how would you assess the crime situation in the city of Santa Barbara? And what kinds of safety measures need to be taken, and that includes relationships with the police department. What is the mayor's role? And I think at this point we are starting with Mr. Scholes.
Okay, I'm glad somebody asked this question. The mayor's role is to make sure that every public servant is a servant of the public when they're an employee of the city of Santa Barbara. What I tried to say last night at a forum on the Mesa was that not this last negotiation with the police department, but the previous negotiation, Detective J.C. Hunter got up and showed statistics that the city of Santa Barbara has been lying about the amount of crime that are committed in the city, and he broke it down into specific types of crimes where sometimes it was 200% and 300% higher than what the city was reporting to the FBI. Then Chief Sanchez got up and said, well, even though Detective Hunter is a great detective, he knows nothing about statistics and he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think we have a major problem when we have the public servants who are supposed to enforce the law having disagreements on who's lying and who's telling the truth and whether or not the city is reporting things. I think anybody that's lived here for a long period of time can obviously see that things are getting worse in this town. They just came out with statistics that things are kind of leveling off, but are we happy with the level that it is now? I'm certainly not. And the way we start is with strict enforcement. The other things we do, we find out from the cities that clean their cities up, like New York through Giuliani, San Francisco, Santa Monica. What did you people do that was effective in controlling crime and getting rid of the homeless criminal population so that we don't spend money on programs that don't
Thank you
work?
very much, Mr. Scholes. And now, Ms. Schneider.
The process in which the city analyzes the crime data is the same process that cities throughout the country use. It's ComStat. And monthly there are meetings related to everything from burglaries to robberies to home invasions to type 1 crimes having to do with violent crimes. And the crimes do show that major crimes have gone down over time in the last few years. I think the difference has been in the community sense of what safety is that when you learn more and when you have people like Red Code Roger on Ed Hat, and I do that as well, I hear something outside and what's going on, you check online and you almost instantly get this information, and it's the instant information as it happens, but not necessarily knowing what happens at the end of it in terms of the resolution of a situation. So there seems to be a disconnect between the numbers that we receive and the sense of feeling that people have in certain parts of town about certain parts of crime. So to deal with that, with the mayor, what I've tried to do is, and I initiated having the chief of police come to council meetings on a regular basis as a public meeting to talk about these issues, trying to increase accessibility, and then as a council making sure that the police department have the tools available, including the number of officers, to be on the street to deter crime when possible and also catch criminals after the fact. During the last 4 years, we've actually increased the number of sworn officers on the beat.
Thank you very much. Now, I think we will go to a question about affordable housing. Should Santa Barbara allow increased density downtown to redress the jobs housing imbalance? And in this case, we do start with
Think with me.
We do start with, yes.
Right.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
We start with Ms. Schneider.
Well, this has been a very talked about process and part of the general plan update that was just adopted, part of the housing element that was just adopted, part of the average unit density ordinance that was just adopted. And it's a tricky issue in terms of how do you balance having enough opportunity for people to live and work here and also keep that small town feel that we all cherish here in Santa Barbara. So there was a very careful process in terms of where density should happen and where it should not. I'm a firm believer of going against sprawl, so I don't believe we should build out that creates more impacts on the environment, creates more traffic impacts, and to find ways. What I think was really good about the average unit density ordinance that we just passed is that no longer do we have this incentivized process where the big, bulky luxury condos downtown are now the way to go. Now, instead, we're looking at the size of the units and giving bonus density to keep things small, which actually reduces the size, bulk, and scale of buildings, giving more people opportunities for different types of housing. Not everyone's going to want to live downtown in a condo. Some people are going to want the 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a yard, and that's perfectly fine. It's the diversity of the housing in the right place that make it work in order to create a place where people can live and work in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Scholes.
Well, I'm completely against higher density anywhere in Santa Barbara. I've lived here 39 years. I've seen what more population does. It creates more problems, creates more crime, creates more strain on our resources. Any of you that lived through the last major 7-year drought that we had knew what we dealt with water. Water is the #1 resource that people rely on to survive. It's going to be the #1 problem from now till eternity. There's only so much of it. If there's a statewide drought, we're never going to get state water because they'll close it off. They can't afford to let the San Joaquin Valley get salinated. So we have to look at things realistically. I don't live in Malibu. I don't live in Beverly Hills because I can't afford it. You know, I think if we have affordable housing, I think senior assisted housing is the first way we go. People that have been productive for decades in this community have raised families, and because of a death of a spouse or a limited income because of the retirement age that they did, should not be forced out of Santa Barbara. I think we need to help the people that have been productive first, and if you're able to make a living, you have to look at things realistically and say, you know what, maybe I would be better off and my family would be better off if I move somewhere where it's more affordable. We could build 100,000 low-income units and there would still be another 100,000 people that would want to apply to get one of these units. We can't turn Santa Barbara into Los Angeles.
Thank you. The next question has to do with transgender rights, and it has to do with Assembly Bill 1266. It says the Sex Segregated Students' Rights Bill, which allows students in all California public schools to choose the restroom and sports team that aligns with their gender identity rather than their assigned sex at birth. Some groups are collecting signatures to repeal the law and have it be on a ballot initiative in the next election. Would you defend the law or support the repeal, and why? And we will ask this. This is an assembly question, but of course this affects our local schools as well. So, and I think we start then with Mr. Scholes.
Okay, I support every American's rights to be treated equally. The situation with the transgender and using restrooms, we have to remember that it's their right to be able to use a public restroom, but it's also the right of somebody else to feel comfortable to come in and use it also. In construction jobs I'm on, we have men's restrooms and we have women's restrooms. Maybe we're going to have a section that is for transgender specifically, so it doesn't infringe on the rights of a male or female that feels uncomfortable going into a restroom. We've got to remember that the Constitution begins with we the people. That's everybody. Luckily, the founders of the country and the Constitution were able to write these documents that are still able to be worked on and obeyed because they saw into the future. And I think what we're going to have to do too is look to the future. You know, when I was growing up in the South in the 60s, blacks didn't have rights. My dad didn't have rights as Choctaw in Alabama, in the coal mining regions. The Latinos didn't have the same rights as whites. Women didn't have the right to vote. That's all changed, but it didn't change overnight. And we're going to have to look at things, and I think as far as these restrooms, it's going to have to be, the easiest solution is we set up a restroom for transgender students. It's not going to be a huge population.
Thank you, Mr. Scholes. And Ms. Schneider.
Thank you. Just to be clear, also, the City of Santa Barbara does not have jurisdiction over the school district. That's a separate board of trustees. So certainly policies related to school bathrooms and the like would be up to them. I support the bill. I think that in terms of people's identity and who they choose, how they identify as for themselves and their sexual identity is important to them, and we have to think about the what is comfortable for the individual as well. You know, restrooms. I don't really watch people go to the restroom. You know, if that's an issue. So it's really something I think that we have to look at the equality and the ability for people to reach their full potential. And transgendered politics is a newer kind of issue as it comes to state legislation, and I think it's something that deserves a dialogue, but something that's done with respect and the dignity of the people involved.
Thank you. Yes. And the next question has to do with just human needs within the community. What is your approach to meeting human needs issues in the community, like the homelessness, mental illness, substance abuse, those kinds of issues? Yes, we do start with Ms. Schneider.
Sure. Well, I think it's important when it comes to homelessness or poverty issues, human needs issues, is that the city cannot work on its own. We have, obviously, we work with our police and fire department, we have parks and recreation services, but we don't have a public health department. We don't have a social services or a mental health department. We rely extensively on partnerships with our business community, the nonprofit world, social service agencies, and other governmental agencies. So we have to work in partnership and work in collaboration. And I've been, ever since at City Hall, been working with various stakeholders and trying to deal with a very complex issue, especially when it comes to people who are homeless and who are dual diagnosed either with a substance abuse issue or mental illness. What the city can do is work within its system and connect with others in creating an environment that can help people reach their best potential. So for example, our restorative policing program, which has been started and expanded in the last 4 years, that takes a whatever it takes approach in interacting with people on the streets, doing whatever it takes to get them the services that they need, connect them to those services, work with the court system, with the jail system, with the hospitals, and then also have an enforcement component to it for people who choose to break the law. Just because whether you're homeless or not, if you break the law, that needs to be enforced, but there are situations where you also have to figure out what can we do to give access to people to the services that they need.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. And Mr. Scholes.
I think one of the biggest problems we have in the city and in the state and in the national government is that our government is not spending money, Americans, taxpayers' money, to solve Americans' problems. I think if we told a lot of these countries that we're giving billions of dollars away, that look, we've got to change this program. We're going to have to write a contract just like somebody has a contract for a mortgage. We need to take care of the people in our country. The mentally ill, they need to be taken care of. The mental state hospitals were closed down. I happened to work up at Intel last year. These are all my security badges for a worldwide effort. I was able to work in RP1, top secret research and only development building in the world for Intel. One of the things they're working on is biomedics. There's systems that are going to come up in the future for people that are mentally ill that will guarantee that they will stay on their meds because they will have an implant that will monitor protein deficiencies. The criminal, homeless need to know that we are not going to tolerate their actions around here. We have to remember that merchants need to make a living. They can't have customers run away. The public needs to feel safe in their neighborhoods. And we always have to remember that the public is number one. If you're a widowed senior, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, and you're sitting at home and somebody is pounding on your door trying to get in and you're calling the police and the police are not responding in a timely manner, you do not feel safe in your community.
Thank you. Yes. Our next question does go to, as part of the mayor's functions, and this has to do with what is the mayor's function in relationship to local communities and neighborhoods that would be within the city, as well as with UCSB relations. And we do start with Mr. Scholes.
Well, you can't be a separatist. We can see with the traffic that Lompoc, Santa Maria, Ventura, and Camarillo even affect us up here because of the traffic and the congestion. You always have to look at the big picture. If you isolate yourself and only look at the center of a cell, you're only going to look at the nucleus. You have to look at the whole sphere. You have to look at us like we're a galaxy, that we're being held together by certain bonds. And what's good for one should be good for the other. What's bad for one can be bad for another. Santa Barbara, Goleta, Carpinteria, we're really unique. We're really an island. Gaviota cuts us off. The mountains down below Carpinteria cut us off. The mountains behind Santa Barbara cut us off. We are a three-city island. And we also need to remember that we are limited in our resources, and what one does is always going to affect the other, so you can never close the door on trying to work together to solve problems. I'm a graduate of UCSB. I wouldn't be here if I didn't come to the university, get my credential, get my degree. UCSB has gone from the University of Surf to one of the top universities in the country, in the world, and we should be proud of that. And we need to support the university system, but it's also pathetic, the cost of what a university degree costs nowadays. It's astronomical risk to go to college now, and that should not be the case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scholes. And Ms. Schneider.
Thank you. I actually agree a lot with what Mr. Scholes said, that we do need to work regionally. Issues related to traffic, to the business climate, to trash, to water, to getting from point A to point B, to housing. You have to think regionally, to wildland management, fire management, to emergency preparedness. We are not on our own, and in fact, when we do work with each other on a regional basis and also on a statewide and national basis, we become better than the sum of our parts. I've been involved with the League of California Cities ever since being on council. I currently serve, I just ended my term as president of the local Channel Counties Division, which is the Tri-County area, and really that's a great opportunity to learn from Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties how are cities working together on issues of mutual interest and concern, and share those best practices with each other and make those connections and those relationships so that when issues come up, whether it's a statewide initiative or some legislation, we can band together and make sure we work to do something that works best for the region as a whole.
Thank you. The next question has to do with the conducting of the business of the city is conducted in English. There are many people in the city who do not speak English. How should the city communicate with them? And we'll start with Ms. Schneider.
Sure. Actually, City TV, Channel 18, all the city council meetings are simulcast in Spanish. They have you can actually come to any city council meeting and get the headsets and be in the room and hear the simultaneous interpretation anytime. That is announced there's a signage about that in Spanish in city council chambers. They also show the Spanish interpretation meetings on Sundays on Channel 18. I believe it's accessible through the website as well. So I think in terms of the core policy meetings that is taken care of, actually we're kind of unique in terms of cities who are able to offer that process. During the general plan update, another major outreach, for example, the Milpas Street safety improvements, many meetings happened in the community with simultaneous interpretation, both like with cleanups or issues related to concerns related to park cleanups or safety issues. Flyers are done both in English and in Spanish in order to really make sure we can reach out to all members of Santa Barbara, all residents, and make sure they can also feel comfortable coming forward and giving their feedback and opinions.
Thank you. And Mr. Scholes.
Well, I think we need to remember Santa Barbara is a multinational community. We have people living here from all over the world. The only interpretation we have is Spanish. Now, for the DMV, you have multiple interpretations of documents and stuff, and I think we should probably work towards that. And I'm sure there's a system on a computer where it would automatically translate it for them to hear it. But as far as Spanish speaking only goes, when I was a teacher, I was opposed to the ESL program, not because I wasn't willing and didn't want to educate the students, but when you graduate from high school and you've gone through the system, and the system hasn't got you to the point where you can operate in the language of the country that you're in, which happens to be English in this country, you are holding the student back. They are not able to apply for jobs that they could be qualified for. They cannot excel. They don't expand their minds because they have been carried along so that they don't have to understand English. Asian community, I don't know how many of you remember when the Hmong and the Mountain Yards and the Vietnamese came to the United States. They push their kids to learn the language, and we need to tell the adults, this is how you make your kids' lives better. If I lived in Mexico, I guarantee you I would become fluent in Spanish. If I lived in Germany, I would become fluent in German. English is the money language of the world, and anybody that lives here is being trapped if they don't learn it.
Thank you very much. All right. The next question has to do with tourism. Has become an increasingly large part of the Santa Barbara economy. What is the mayor's role in encouraging or monitoring that industry? And I'll start with Mr. Scholes.
Well, I think the mayor's role is to make sure everything is done possible so that these people are going to come back and spend money again. We need to advertise to the world that Santa Barbara is a safe place to come and enjoy with yourself and your family. Now, I've walked all the way from the harbor up to Upper State Street at the freeway. I walked all the hotels, and they are telling me the same thing that the merchants are telling me, that people are leaving before their time is up because of the problem of these belligerent criminal homeless, pounding on their doors, screaming, defecating, urinating, jumping in the swimming pool. How are we going to continue to have tourism when the reputation of Santa Barbara as a homeless advocacy city goes all the way up to Shasta, which a friend of mine who owns a cabin up there just told me people were telling him that he couldn't believe that Santa Barbara allows this to happen. They won't come down here anymore. And it's the same with Europe. The same with the gangs. Fiesta, we have gang members from north and south come into Santa Barbara, and at some point, if we don't get serious about eliminating these gangs, we're going to have a situation that happened in Washington, D.C. Somebody ends up opening up with a gun, people are going to get hurt, and people will quit coming here. Enforcement of the law and convincing people that you have a safe environment is the best way to promote tourism.
Thank you. Ms. Schneider.
So the hotel tax and sales tax are rising quite a bit, and actually TOT, the hotel tax, has been the best it's ever been in the record of city government as far as we've been keeping records, which is a good thing. And I would agree that we want to make sure people feel they're enticed to come here through marketing, through the Conference and Visitors Bureau, and we want them to stay, and then we want them to return. So the mayor's role is also to, open up the welcome mat for people who want to come and enjoy Santa Barbara, and also make sure we do everything we can to keep the place safe and to keep it inviting and welcoming. Do we have problems related to homelessness and gang issues? Of course we do, that we've always have. Do cities like Santa Monica, San Diego, Santa Cruz, Portland, Monterey, San Luis Obispo, do they also have similar concerns? Yes. We're not alone in this, and I think that's why you have to look regionally in creating innovative solutions to try to deal with these issues. With the restorative policing program that's been established in the last few years, over 200 people have been taken off the streets in Santa Barbara alone. And is that enough? No, of course not. Is there more we can do? Yes. The mayor's role is to keep that persistence, keep the funding there, make sure that the core services are available to have people have a good time, whether you're here to visit or you're here to live.
Thank you. Then our last question is going to be, what are your top 2 priorities if elected, and how will you accomplish them? And that is starting with Ms. Schneider.
Thank you. The big issue, I think, coming up for the city is looking at a $250 million budget gap in our infrastructure funding. And how do you find that kind of funding for things and especially when the redevelopment agency funding was eliminated? We sent a check of $40 million plus back to the state of California that was going to be used for capital improvement projects in the downtown core and waterfront area. We've lost that. There are other major infrastructure needs that we have. So in my next term, there's no way we're going to do $250 million, fill that entire gap. But find a way, find a structure financially that we can have a path where we can figure out how we can make sure when we need the new police headquarters, which we do, we have a way to fund it. The bridge replacements, the road repair. It's not exactly the most exciting thing to talk about, but absolutely essential. The second piece I'd really like to focus on is to finally try to figure out and close all the loopholes related to getting commuter rail here to Santa Barbara. I've been working on it through the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. It's slow moving, but there is progress, and that in and of itself would reduce the traffic here in Santa Barbara and create another opportunity for commuters and visitors to come here.
Thank you. And Mr. Scholes.
Well, I think the number one issue from everybody I've talked to is the homeless again. Sure, we maybe helped 200 go home, but what happens to the other 400 that showed up behind them? It's just like when you trap a raccoon or a skunk, they're going to move to an area where there's food, where there's shelter, where it's easy. What we need to do is work with these nonprofits and try to get these people that are not mentally ill to get into programs, to get help or get out. That's the only way you can do. Tough solutions or tough problems require tough solutions sometimes. So many people say they don't go downtown anymore because of the problem of the homeless. And these young kids who come into town that the merchants and the public say are the physically most abusive. Okay, if we have a lot of police officers, that's great. But the problem is, are they enforcing the law? I don't believe that they're enforcing the existing laws. I think we need to take care of gangs. I think we need to look into filing charges against these people that are leading the gangs for child abuse, because they have the younger kids do the crimes. There's only 300 people in this town that are involved in the gangs, according to the police department. Are you going to feel good about the budget if you go downtown and witness a stabbing on State Street like we've had, or a shooting, or you see somebody getting beat up with a bat? All of that ties in to our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Scholes. Thank you. That was our last question. We are going to go to closing statements, and we have as long as 2 minutes per person, and we start with Mr. Scholes.
All right, I hope some of you will come up and take a look at these pictures and items I brought, because on the flyer it says that I was a teacher, graduated UCSB. I had a home health care agency. I took a business that had 7 employees, and we built it to 150 full and part-time employees. My wife at the time was also a victim of Dr. Julio Diaz, the drug doctor on Milpas. Because the police department didn't pay attention, the district attorney's office didn't pay attention, and the AMA didn't pay attention, a lot of people's lives were ruined. And I think one of the things we need to do in Santa Barbara is restore the confidence in the people that they are number one. I've spent my life out in the field building a better tomorrow. A lot of candidates tell you about all of the committees they've been on, what they've done while they've been sitting in an office. I've been out there ensuring that the future of America is going to be better for you and better for the future. And that's what I'll do if I'm elected mayor. I will put the citizens of Santa Barbara number one. And I think a strong economy will follow. You have to have the confidence of the people before you can get anything. And that's why we have voted down the new police headquarters. And I've stated that at city council meetings. The public is not going to vote for a new police headquarters as long as Cam Sanchez is the chief of police. I think we also need to stop looking nationwide for people to run the city departments when we have people that have worked 20 years in this city, have grown up in this city, have known this city. These people are coming here to serve themselves, not to serve the public.
Thank you, Mr. Scholes. And now Ms. Schneider.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and to answer these questions. The voters of Santa Barbara have major issues, not only in this race, but also the city council race, and the 7 people who are at City Hall on your behalf make decisions every week that pertain to your day-to-day activities. City of Santa Barbara is an extraordinary place. The community here, I don't know who else has the type of civic engagement that we do, and whether it's on volunteering on boards or commissions, or through the business community, or through nonprofits, or the philanthropic world. It is quite extraordinary. And I think my role as mayor, what I've tried to do is bring those different sectors together, work to see that there are 3 different layers, basically. I look at the city in my role as mayor. The foundation piece is your basic municipal work. Getting the right tools on the budget, dealing with public safety, your general park maintenance, the road repair, the basic stuff, your water, when you turn it on, make sure it's clean and safe and healthy. When you flush your toilet, it goes where it needs to go. The middle layer is the regional piece, dealing with traffic, with homelessness, with gang prevention, youth opportunities, with trash. How do we interact together as a community on these big, complex regional issues? And then the top part is really what makes Santa Barbara special. We are more than any city USA. We have a vibrant cultural economy here, a great entrepreneurship with UCSB and other institutions here, people who have great ideas, who want to stay here. What can we do as a city to have people reach their full potential and have it not only be a destination worldwide, but a place where we can live, work, play, and prosper right here in Santa Barbara. And you can't do the top part unless the foundation and the interactions work. So I certainly hope, I've worked very hard the last few years as mayor, and I certainly hope that the voters will allow me to serve 1 more term, and it's been an honor to be mayor of this amazing city of Santa Barbara.
Thank you. As we close, I would like to thank the volunteers, thank Larry Nimmer of Nimmer Productions for the videotaping, Viviana Marzano of Voices for the Spanish translation, and Gary Atkins for the sound system. The forum will be seen on Channel 17 with a schedule on www.sbchannels.tv. There will also be a link to the forum on the local league website, www.lwvsantabarbara.org. I would also like to remind you to explore the League's election website, which is www.smartvoter.org. Informational materials from the candidates and membership information about the League are available at the back of the room. Please consider joining the League to participate in forums such as this and in other civic actions. Thank you, candidates, for joining us this evening. We appreciate your drive and commitment to serve our community. And thank you to the audience as well for joining us this evening. We hope that you found the program informative and useful as you prepare to vote. We thank you again and good evening.